Hi everyone, MARKCHES here. Welcome to the channel. And today I'll be comparing the Freak 3 and the GT Run. So we'll find out which one is better. So you might be wondering why I'm comparing these two sneakers. These two sneakers are relatively new. This is a newer one. And actually in some parts of the world, the Freak 3 hasn't been released yet. So these two sneakers are very new. Right now for me, these are two of the sneakers that are very bouncy and very supportive. So I'm just giving you an idea how it feels for these two sneakers and which one you would buy if you're looking for a very supportive and bouncy sneaker. I'll give you the difference. Let's first discuss the uppers of these two sneakers. On the Freak 3, it has this very thin net mesh material around the forefoot, and around the midfoot, it has this synthetic leather. And going to the heel, it also has the synthetic leather wrapping around the heel part of the sneaker. And at the bottom of it, it also has that net mesh material wrapping the heel cup of the sneaker. And comparing it with the upper of the GT Runs, the GT Runs also has a net mesh material upper, but it is more fused. It's thinner. It doesn't have the underlining layer like the ones on the Freak 3s. On the GT Runs, the underlining material is kind of thinner compared to the Freak 3s, which is more padded. So the main difference between the two uppers of the sneaker, of course, on the GT Run, this is very thin. This is very fused. So it gives you extra support around the forefoot part, plus extra more ventilation. Since on the Freak, it has a thicker underlying material plus the synthetic leather. So ventilation won't be as good as the ones on the GT Run. Plus on the GT Run, since the material is really thin, it is very light for the upper. But the only downside of the upper of the GT Runs is it is not as comfortable as the upper on the Freak 3, which on the Freak 3's upper is surprisingly very comfortable, especially the tongue. I just wish that you made the tongue of the GT Run padded more. I've been ranting about that in my past few videos about the GT Run. That's my only complaints on the GT Runs right now. Give some extra padding to where it is important. For example, padded on top of the ankle part of the sneaker, okay? Which on the Freak 3 is very comfortable from the forefoot to the heel. But in terms of support, both have very supportive upper. But if you want an extra supportive material for the upper, the GT Run is better compared to the Freaks because the upper of the GT Runs, although it is very thin, it is really extra supportive. It doesn't move at all, but the only downside is it's not as comfortable as the upper of the Freak 3. Well, as for the support of the Freak 3, it's still very good, but comparing it side by side with the upper of the GT Runs, it's extra supportive, plus the shape around the forefoot is more snug compared to the Freak 3s. If you're someone who likes it very supported around the forefoot and snug around the forefoot area, you will like the GT Runs more compared to the Freak 3's shape around the forefoot. Now moving on to the heel part of the sneaker, it has the same height color but lower on the Freak 3 around the ankle bone. So that's the main difference. But in terms of the heel height, they have the same height, but on the Freak 3, it has this curve so that your ankle could move more and more mobility around the ankle, which the GT Runs doesn't have, but it didn't bother me at all. It still has a nice curve going out just a bit so that it won't restrict your ankle too much. But in terms of ankle mobility, you will like the Freak 3s more. And in terms of cushioning around the inside of your ankle and heel, there's a lot more cushioning, of course, on the Freak 3. So if you're more into comfort, the Freak 3 is for you. But in terms of heel lockdown and heel containment, both sneakers have very good heel lockdown and heel containment. And speaking of containment, the cushion on both sneakers really helps out in the support and cradling of your foot. On the Freak 3s, you can see the cushion going up on the lateral part and even on the medial part of the sneaker. You can see this really going up. And as for the lateral part, it also goes up. And around the midfoot part, it also has this plastic piece for extra lateral support and containment. And it really cradles your foot very well on the Freak 3s. While the GT Run will also give you the same feeling. The React foam cushion also goes up and dismounts, really cradles your foot. So you're really sitting just below the mountains a bit around here. So this mountain peaks really cups your foot well, and even on the lateral part it also goes up, and even on the heel part of the two sneakers they also go up. So in terms of support for the cushioning, both sneakers really cradles your foot very well. Speaking of the cushion, of course, the Freak 3 features a full-length phylon and two zoom pods around the forefoot of the Freak 3s, and comparing it with the GT Run, which has a full-length React foam, React insole, double stock zoom unit, one forefoot zoom straddle, plus another zoom unit at the bottom of the zoom straddle. So in terms of bounciness, GT Run is extra bouncy from the forefoot to the heel, and it has a thicker cushion setup. The React is thicker compared to the phylon of the Freak 3s. So impact protection around the heel part of the sneaker, it's a lot better on the GT Run, but the Freak 3 ain't that bad either. The phylon has a very nice impact protection, but comparing it with the thicker React foam of the GT Runs, of course, it will be better in terms of impact protections on the GT Run. Plus, in the forefoot, of course, double stack zoom unit. One's the zoom straddle, but you need to break it in a little bit more on the GT Runs compared to the Freak 3s. After just little breaking time on the Freak 3, you will feel the bounciness of the zoom pods, which is unlocked too. You can see it here around the forefoot that it is unlocked. So it's really bouncy around the forefoot and has nice impact protection around the heel. And one main difference between the cushion setup of these two sneakers, so if you are more into a very responsive sneaker and lower to the ground sneaker, the Freak 3 will give you that. This is slower compared to the GT Runs. But if you like extra bounciness and extra impact protection, and if you don't mind the cushion to be a little bit more higher off the ground, you will like the GT Runs. But the bounciness on the forefoot on the Freak 3, given its low profile, is also very bouncy. Like I've said in my performance review of the Freak 3s, I was really impressed with the bounciness of the Freak 3s and the impact protection of the Freak 3s, given that it's not too high off the ground. But if you like a cushion setup that is extra bouncy, extra springy, you will feel it after breaking it in on the GT Runs. Now let's move on to the outsole of these two sneakers. The GT Runs rubber compound is harder compared to the ones on the Freak 3. The Freak 3 has a thinner rubber blade compared to the GT Runs, but in terms of the durability of the rubber materials, I would give it a little bit more on the GT Runs compared to the Freak 3s. But since the Freak 3's traction is a little bit more pliable compared to the GT Runs, it's a lot better in dust and moist floor. I actually wore this head to head, and I think doing my second test on the GT Runs, and the floor that I was playing with was moist because it was really raining hard here in the Philippines. And after one run, I switched to the Freak 3s, and the Freak 3s grip better on a moist floor compared to the GT Runs. But right about on the third day of my testing on the GT Runs, it became a lot better on that moist floor, the same floor that I played with. But in terms of dust, I think the outsole of the Freak 3s will be better compared to the GT Runs. Both outsoles are kind of decoupled in some sense, because on the GT Run, although it still has outsole here, but it is really cut around the mid-foot part of the outsole. So it has the coupled outsole-like feel when you're running with it. Both have a very nice heel-to-toe transition when you're running. Both are made for players who likes to run up and down the floor a lot, and you would feel the smoothness when you're running with these two sneakers. As for the width of the sneaker, let's try it out, which is wider. I think it will be the Freak 3. Yeah, it will be the Freak 3. So you can see the Freak 3 protruding a little bit more on the forefoot part. But what's nice about the GT Runs, even though it's not as wide as the Freak 3, it has this very aggressive lateral outrigger, and it's very hard. So it gives you the stability that you need. And as for the heel part, it's pretty much equal around the heel. So if you want a wider sneaker, of course, Freak 3 will give you that. But I would say the GT Runs, like in my performance review, if you watch it, or if you haven't, I'll put the link up here. Like I've said, for the GT Runs, even though it's a narrow sneaker, the cushion is kind of thick thick, so you're higher off the ground, but it is really, really stable because of the materials. The upper is really supportive, the cushion cradles your foot, and the outsole has a very nice lateral outrigger. And as for the Freak 3, since it's lower to the ground, it has a wider base around the forefoot. It is really a very stable sneaker. So it really depends on your preference on which you would choose, of course. First, of course, is the budget. The GT Run is 9,600 pesos, while the Freak 3 is 6,600 pesos. So around 2,000 pesos difference or $40 difference between these two sneakers. So if you would ask me, Mark, why would I buy the GT Runs over the Freak 3s? Because of the price. One main reason that will make you choose the GT Run is of course the cushion setup of the GT Run. It is really springy. The React foam density is very, very bouncy from the forefoot to the heel. You would feel like you're in a running shoes when you're running up and down the floor on the GT Runs. So I think that's why they call it the Run, because you would feel that you're running with a high-end running shoes from Nike. That's the exact feeling that you'll feel on the GT Runs. It's very springy, it's very bouncy from the forefoot to the heel. And if you need extra impact protection around the heel, you would surely choose the GT Runs. But if you're more on a budget, the Freak 3 won't fail you. It has a very nice bounciness in the forefoot for a very low profile sneaker, a good impact protection in the heel, and of course a very supportive upper, plus extra comfortable for the upper compared to the GT Runs. As for the sizing of these two sneakers, regular footers go true to your size and wide footers go half a size up. And for wide footers, I think the Freak 3 will be better for you because it has a wider forefoot space on top compared to the GT Run, which is kind of snug around the forefoot. So I think wide footers you would choose, or you would prefer the Freak 3s more. As for the weight of these two sneakers, 409. So the same weight, and they're both very light on your foot. So that's it on my comparison between the GT Run and the Zoom Freak 3. Let me know which sneaker you would choose and why. Hit me a comment down below. This has been MARKCHES once again. Thank you for dropping by. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.